Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to the very first edition of the FIRST+II dialogue series. I would say thank you so much for you all making time to be a part of this maiden edition. The FIRST+II dialogue series has been created as a platform to enhance thoughtful and practical conversations across the financial ecosystem. Bringing together financial institutions, MSMEs, regulators, development partners, young professionals, all other ecosystem players to engage on issues that would help shape inclusive and resilient financial systems. Through these conversations, we are hoping to be able to spotlight diverse perspectives, share practical insights and experiences, and encourage collaboration across institutions. But ultimately, this platform has been created to contribute to building financial systems that work for everybody. We are excited to begin this journey with today's conversation on rethinking how finance serves MSMEs, women, youth, and persons with disabilities. Before we begin, just a few quick housekeeping notes. This session is being hosted virtually, but we are actually also streaming live on LinkedIn. Kindly keep your devices muted as we go along, and feel free to share your thoughts and questions in the chat session. We will try to take a few audience questions towards the end of the session, if time permits. So please just share your thoughts and questions in the chat section. If you want your question directed to a particular panelist, please feel free to do so, or else we'll take them generally and try to address them. We also encourage everyone that's watching on LinkedIn to share key insights from the conversation. You can use the hashtag FIRST+II dialogue series. We'll write that in the comment section. You can just copy it and hashtag whilst we go along. So thank you once again for joining us. So let's go straight into today's conversation. We said we're starting at 2:30, so we're starting at exactly that. Just to be sure, let's see if our MSME. Yes, Esther just joined. Hello, Esther. So let me just give Esther a minute to settle in. So I wanted to introduce her first, but then I will take the opportunity to introduce one more person before she comes in. So I will introduce Mr. Samuel Sechere. He's the CEO of Echimakwanma Community Bank, has extensive experience in community banking and financial inclusion. He's so committed to strengthening access to financial services and building responsible financial solutions that support MSMEs, women, and all in the community. Hi, Mr. Samuel. I know I've mentioned your name, but just let's see you say a quick hello and tell us just a little thing on what Echimakwanma stands to do for their community. Just a little introduction would be great. Hi, Mr. Samuel. Can you hear us? You can just mention your name and yes, about your role at. Hi.
Yes,
will be great to see you.
Right. Good. All right. Good afternoon once again. Yes, it's great to see all of you. It's been a while. Rose, just to do a quick introduction of the bank. Echimakwanma Community Bank, it's a community bank that's been in existence for the past 43 years. And we've been in touch with the community. We are a part of the community. We are embedded in the community. So we are not detached from the community. The bank is part and parcel of the community, and we do what the community wants us to do. We have constant engagement with the community. The beauty with community banks is that community banks are owned by the community. The forebears, or those who set up the bank, were all members of the community. So by tradition and by very nature, we are what we call ourselves a community bank. And so we know how best to serve our community.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Soche. We'll get more into the conversation. We have another of our panelists ready, Esther Bosomefi. Esther is the CEO of Mine All for Jesus Poultry Farm. Also a nurse by profession, an MSME entrepreneur who is passionate about agribusiness growth and sustainability. Through her business journey, for this conversation today, she'll be bringing practical insights into the realities, opportunities, and challenges that some MSMEs face in accessing finance and scaling operations. Hi, Esther. Can you give us an introduction? Let's just get to know you. Hello, Esther. Okay. I think we'll move on when she joins. We'll continue from there. We also have on Mr. Richard Obobi. He's an investment and business leader with over 23 years of experience across Africa, Europe, and the US. Currently serving as program director for the MasterCard Foundation FIRST+II program, being implemented by the Capital Plus Exchange. He brings expertise, extensive ones, from finance, risk management, business strategy, and sustainable economic development. Hi, Richard.
Hi.
Just a little bit that I've not mentioned anymore, so we get more familiar with you.
This is Richard, and I'm happy to be here.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay, so last but definitely not least, on the panelists, we have Mr. Ernest Senyujandru, who is the group head of the CDC group with over 20 years of experience in advisory services, risk management, and business development across the financial services, agribusiness space, education, health, and tourism sectors. He's passionate about building sustainable businesses and strengthening inclusive financial systems. Hello, Ernest. Just a quick introduction from you. You are on mute.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Glad to be here. And thanks, Rosalie, for the opportunity. Looking forward to the conversations that we'll be having today on the theme that we're all looking forward to. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Ernest. Esther, is Esther back on? Let me quickly check if she's on, because I want us to go past the introduction stage and get straight into the conversation. Is she on? Let me check. Hi, Esther, can you hear us?
Yes,
I
please.
see that you are. Okay, so let me take the introduction again, so that before you come in. So we have joining us Esther, who is the CEO of Mine All for Jesus Poultry Farm. Yes, she's also a nurse by profession and a passionate MSME entrepreneur who is so passionate about agribusiness growth and sustainability. Through her business journey, she would be bringing to this conversation practical insights into the realities and opportunities, as well as challenges that MSMEs face in accessing finance and scaling operations. So hi, Esther, just some more introduction from you so we can get to know you more.
Okay, so thank you. Just as you said, my name is Esther Bosomefi, a public health nurse in Secondary Health Center. I'm also the CEO of Mine All for Jesus Poultry Farm. I'm in a no-new site in Western region. So that's all about me.
Right. I'm sure we'll get to know you more and about your business and all of that once we get into the conversation. Thank you so much for making time out of your busy schedule to join us. And thank you all. We know that across our financial ecosystem, there's been lots of conversations on inclusion, how to continue to grow. But for many MSMEs, women-led businesses, youth, young entrepreneurs, and persons with disabilities, does access to opportunity still feel even after all this conversation, or are there still some feeling of it being uneven for these groups? For today's discussion, this is an opportunity for us to reflect honestly on what is working, what is not, what can we change if our financial systems are to be more inclusive, resilient, and responsive to the realities of the people that they are meant to serve, especially the ones that are underserved. So we'll dive right in to Mr. Ernest. From your experience and vast knowledge. Okay, so sorry about that. So for Mr. Ernest, from your experience, the current financial system that we have in our space in Ghana, who do you think the financial system serves best? Who do you think is still being left behind, just in general terms?
Thank you very much, Rose. Question is very interesting, especially because we have to understand what financial institutions do in the first place, right? This is what we call financial intermediation. I mean, taking money from people with certainty to repay them and giving those monies to people where there is some level of uncertainty as to whether they will pay back or not. So basically, the system is designed to actually find people that are clearly documented, people that can be traced, people that the system itself is able to see, so that you can improve on the certainty that they will pay back. So on the face of it, you will find out that institutions are very keen to actually serve those where certainty is assured. This is where the whole discussion gets interesting, because when we talk about the system having you documented, having you visible, it's not because you walk around and everybody sees that you're walking around. It is because what the system requires of you to have, whether it is Ghana card, whether it is a full-time employment, whether it is being working in established businesses, whichever way you look at it, the system has clearly determined that you are the ones where certainty is really assured. So what do we see? The institutions are serving businesses that are medium to large and well-registered businesses. They are serving people who are salaried workers. They are serving organizations that can be seen. And once that has happened, deliberately or not, the system is leaving behind any other person that is not documented, that is not visible, that cannot be seen. And the interesting thing is that in our country, majority of businesses are not seen because they are informal. I mean, Statistical Service is very clear. They've shown us enough evidence to establish the fact that out of all the business establishments that we have, over 2.64 million businesses, about 90% of them are not known. And because they are not known, financial institutions are also very cautious as to whether they should deal with them or not. So that is basically what is happening. Institutions are serving those they have more certainty that they will reach and serve them and get their monies paid back, compared to those where the certainty level is quite risky for them, to use lack of a better word. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. So I would want to ask Mr. Secretary at this point. We've just heard from Ernest that I mean, if you are not known, if you are not seen in most of the informal sector, then which means it's difficult for financial institutions to serve you. That has been registered. So from the perspective of a financial institution, what makes serving underserved groups both challenging but very necessary? And I say this because we've already heard that, yes, they are not seen. But are there other things that make it very challenging for businesses, especially small to medium businesses, to have access to finance from the perspective of financial institution? Kindly unmute so we can hear you.
Okay, good afternoon once again. Yeah, thanks, Rosalind. I believe you can hear me now.
Yes, perfectly clear.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, Ernest hit the nail right on the head with regard to why, in a way, financial institutions tend to shy away from dealing with the informal sector. The challenge that we have seen beyond what Ernest just put out is that apart from they not being seen, if you permit me to borrow his word, the informal sector doesn't really have proper record keeping. That is one challenge. As a financial institution, before we can make a decision on, say, any credit to give out, we need to have certain records. And that is what the informal sector really lacks. And then again, sometimes in our case, as a community bank, there are geographical barriers to accessing those clients who are excluded. And so those geographical barriers have to be overcome in order to get to them. And sometimes getting to them be where they are involves more cost. And as a financial institution, most of the time we are focused on profits. And so we go for the low-hanging fruits. If you can get people in close proximity to do business with, why bother yourself going the extra mile to reach the underserved? So that is another challenge that we have.
Oh, right.
And then again, yes, we have, as financial institutions, we have stringent conditions for onboarding clients and for giving credit to those clients at a later stage. And those stringent conditions become a barrier to the underserved. But having said that, I start by saying that we are a community bank, we are in the community. And because of that, we know the clients who are in the community beyond just their businesses. And so we're able to devise ways to go around the challenges that I've enumerated in order to give them the service that they need. I can give one instance. We have more than 100 sales agents who go out physically to interact with the clients on the ground. They go to the markets, they go to small shops, tabletop enterprises. They deal with all manner of people. And the relationship at this stage goes beyond just a banker-customer relationship. They become more like friends. They become business advisors. And so because of that, we are able to train the customers who are underserved to such an extent that we can conveniently deal with them as a financial institution. So basically, those are the issues that I can bring up at this point.
Right, great. So we've heard from Ernest on they're not being seen, they are not even known. We've heard from you that in as much as you try to go the extra mile to find them, sometimes the record keeping and all, they don't meet the criteria. That's very hard. So now I would ask Richard, Finding yourself in a space where, with all these barriers ongoing, you are committed to making a difference. What do you think the financial ecosystem as a whole still haven't understood when it comes to inclusion and being able to integrate every member of the community, be it youth, be it women, be it persons with disability? We've understood the barriers and all that exist. But what do you think that the financial ecosystem as a whole, looking at your role, has still misunderstood about inclusion when it comes to access to finance?
Thank you, Rosalind. I'm surprised you've left a difficult question for me, but I will address that. So the ecosystem continues to confuse inclusive finance with concessionary giving. Something done for vulnerable groups at the expense of commercial returns. So FIRST+, we have experienced that firsthand, and we are trying to frame and address some of these significant challenges. 3 persistent misunderstandings stands out. 1, resilience is treated as balance sheet survival, sort of, not ecosystem health. So at FIRST+, this has surfaced some of the deeper truths within that angle. And this is what I have to say regarding that. Resilience of a financial institution is structurally linked to the resilience of its clients that it serves. So an NDFI whose MSME clients have strong business fundamentals and market linkages is less exposed to credit risk than the one whose clients are fragile. So supporting BDS for MSME and financial capacity for smallholder farmers is a typical credit risk management approach. This is not development subsidy. That's the first one. Second is persons with disability are not seen as a market segment. What do I mean by that? So from our side, the FIRST+II, we work intentionally with GFD, and we've been able to support in excess of 3,000 youth with disability to build some of their capacities that hitherto will not have been done. The demand exists, So sometimes we always think the demand doesn't exist. The demand exists. What is missing is institutional will and product imagination. How do we develop such unique products for that segment? Not just that segment, but for every borrower who can walk through a bank to access financing. And then the third is we see the youth as risk, not as opportunity. So one of the tools that we deployed in phase 1 was an integrated credit assessment model and automated credit scoring system working with some of these FIs. And to date, we've seen that some of the lending that has gone to some of these segments has increased tremendously. So this demonstrates that indeed there are better tools out there, no more collateral, but then other tools that can help address that economic or that systemic flaw within that system. Let me conclude by saying inclusion is a market thesis, it's not a charity posture. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Now we've heard from the financial institutions, we've heard from somebody who is trying to drive change despite the challenges. Now let's hear from Esther. As an MSME owner, I want to believe that have tried or have had some opportunity to be able to access finance or work with a financial institution. So Esther, we would want to pick your thoughts. Can you share any personal experience navigating the financial system as an MSME owner? And at this point, I would ask, what are the challenges that you've faced in accessing finance as an MSME owner, one? And which other challenge did you face that you think is peculiar to the fact that you are a woman, that you think if it was a man or somebody who has been in a business for way longer wouldn't have experience. So it's in two folds. As an MSME owner, what are some of the challenges that you've had to navigate? And as a woman, are there any peculiar challenges that you have faced in accessing finance? We want to understand the barriers before we move further on in the conversation.
Okay, thank you. With the challenges in facing, I think I'll first of all thank the AMI and the +II Foundation. Through them, I got to know a lot about as a business entrepreneur who want to grow your business, what you have to practice, and then the things that you need to involve to be able to access finance. I did that through the class and the tools that were used. I was able to take it and then work with it. So with that, I moved into a financial institution that I had someone to say, and then when they saw my papers, I think everything I could access as much as I can. I want to use for my expansion. But then the challenge is of the interest rate and the period of settlement. Yes. Though I have been trained, so now I can walk in boldly to any financial institution and then access loan. But there is a still challenge with the settlement. So if there is anything that I will want the financial institution to look at it for us, especially those who are zealous to do something for other youth to also be a mentor for the other youth, then the financial institution should at least grant us a long-term loan settlement. My experience with Antaman was they gave me the opportunity to access, but I realized that if I should take currently I'm having 500 bed layers, and so I have a desire to increase or expand the business from 500 beds to 1,000 or 1,005. So I estimated that maybe 200,000 Ghana cedis, I can put up the structure, furnish it, and then have my beds ready. But then when I moved in and the settlement is just 1 year, how can I pay 200,000 within a year without any grace period to even do the best, like looking at the procedure and then the system on grounds? It's very challenging. I will not say that because I'm a woman, because sometimes I get even favor as a woman and a youth who is ready to do something. I get more help from that. But just that I will recommend that Mastercard Foundation with AMI will still push on to the financial institutions so that they will come to the level that we can access the loan and then we expand our business for other youth to also have job opportunity, and those who are resilient to also try to set up something for themselves. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Very interesting. I actually thought women had peculiar challenges, but well, so it's definitely not a one size fits all. For once, we've heard that there are advantages for women who are trying to access finance, and then the mention of the interest rates, which I mean is a general concern for all. So with that, then I would want to ask Ernest. So now we've actually moved from just trying to understand the system and how it works, and we are moving on to the challenges, which Esther has started off for us. what are some of the biggest structural barriers that you think prevent, in particular, MSMEs, women, young entrepreneurs, persons with disability from accessing finance that we've all not already mentioned?
Thank you very much, Rosalind. And let me talk about structural barriers from both demand side and the supply side. Yeah. So we're talking from the point of the youth, the women, the persons with disabilities, all right. But we're also talking from the point of the institutions. My first pick on the demand side, I keep going back to my informality issue, because you see, once you have majority of women-owned businesses, youth-owned businesses that are not formalized for various reasons, we have the first barrier. You are not formalized, so as I said earlier on, nobody can really track you down. You can always just vanish from the face and gone. Your record keeping becomes an issue. You are not keeping proper records. In fact, as an institution, your credit history is not known, and poor KYC issues over there. So that's the first one. I normally would say that informality is the mother of all barriers as far as the demand side is concerned, because it puts some pressure on you if you are formalized to do some things basically right. Now, you can understand that there are micro businesses, small, very micro, small businesses. In fact, micro, out of every 10 businesses, about 9 are micro, and they don't see the need to actually formalize. And most of these, disproportionately, women are there and the youth are there. The youth are trying different things every day. So they themselves will tell you that if they try one, it doesn't work, the next one will work. But there's no trace of what they are doing. So that's the first one. The second issue is about what Mr. Sechere spoke about earlier, the poor accounting, record keeping and stuff like that, because institutions would always like to look at those records if they want to serve them. There are issues relating to gender disadvantages. I mean, women face it, and people talk about the issues of collateral, which is true, because most of these people that are excluded that we're talking about, they have issues when it comes to collateral to support. Because on the supply side, which I will be talking about also, there is the issue about institutional willingness. I mean, I said already that it's certainty into uncertainty. So willingness to really support these demographics that we are talking about on the part of financial institutions, much as they would say it is not the case, the truth is that the appetite to serve that segment is quite low, and a lot of work would have to be done for them to see the business case in those areas. And like Richard said, it's not charity, it's not social responsibility, but to see that there is a business over there. So number one barrier on the supply side for me is that they're just not willing to see this as a real business segment that they can work in. They have eligibility criteria issues that systematically will weed out the segments of the demographics that we are talking about. If you, for example, ask for 3 years record, if you ask for a certain number of years in operation, what you are trying to say is that those of you who do not have that, we are clearing you off the system altogether. There is one that is very critical, the issue between understanding the needs of that demographic and developing products that will suitably fit that part. What we have found is the fact that institutions have products and they expect that all these demographics should fit in. It doesn't matter what sector they are working in. It doesn't matter whether these are businesses that have cash flow cycles that are different from other business types. The institutions have products, and those products have criteria that mostly for most of these segments, they do not just simply fit. And last but not the least, from the supply side, in my view, is the capitalization issue. Now, institutions actually need to have strong shock absorbers. Every financial institution's absorber is the capital base. And we all know what happened in 2019 when we had revocations. And now we know what is happening to my friends from the community banks in terms of minimum capital requirements that a lot of people have started complaining about already. Not because they don't have a good case, but the truth is that if they don't have strong capital base, there is no way they can serve this group that we are talking about. So demand side constraints are there, supply side are there, but in between these two, Richie spoke about the ecosystem. There are some other things also that have to be looked at. So there is all the issue about secured and unsecured unsecured lending, and some kind of requirements about how much of loans you can give without collateral, and above a certain percentage there must be collateral, which has been understood by a number of institutions that every loan must come with collateral. And that kind of understanding from the beginning is actually weeding out some of our favorite demographics that we are talking about. Disproportionate KYC requirements. We've worked on projects where we supported women in the northern and part of Bono regions, and we were trying to just link them up to financial institutions. And more than half of them couldn't be linked because of the Ghana card issue. Now, Ghana card has its advantages. No two ways about that. It actually increases visibility that we can track. But it also, in those areas where people do not have, and which are the demographics that are also excluded, then that becomes more of a barrier for them as well. Is it people that these issues are holding back? Yes, they are. So these barriers are real, and the institutions that are finding innovative ways to go around them are more likely and able to serve the demographics that are excluded. And those that actually do not want to go through that trouble would actually get who we said they are serving, and they will continue serving that, and more of our competitors will be left behind.
Okay, thank you so much. So this next question is to Richard. From the stance of the FIRST+II program, and having been on for close to a year, for close to 2 years, almost 2 years, a year and a half, what patterns or gaps have consistently emerged across institutions and MSMEs that poses as a barrier for young people and women to access finance, which hasn't already been mentioned, if there's any that you can bring to speed?
Okay, so you started with not mention. And let's touch on a few. I think about 5 come to mind. One is institution product mismatch, which NS talked about. There's also the mindset that precedes methodology. There's a bit of the data problem, which runs across most institutions. There's a BDS to finance coordination failure, which we also see, because in such a case, the BDS providers and the financial institutions always operate in parallel universe. So the BDS guys train entrepreneurs, they build their skills, they write business plans, and then hand them over to maybe the FIs, on that which they may never have heard of these BDS before. And they expect these FIs to apply a certain level of rigor to the BDS, to the MSMEs that they've supported. The issue with data, the FIs, maybe I'll say they lack the data infrastructure to verify MSME credit worthiness beyond collateral. That's very critical. So MSMEs, as my other colleague mentioned, lack financial records to demonstrate credit worthiness. At the same time, many of these FIs are now building, I'll call it the data hygiene required before you can develop some scoring tools that are useful to assess these MSMEs. So the ecosystem sort of exists, but acknowledging that this data issue is a major problem which needs careful addressing is something that I think we have to look at. Then maybe the last one will be more to do with the mindset. We currently work with around 21 financial institutions. They are receiving technical assistance from us. The most consistent bottleneck to inclusive lending has not been capital. It's the internal belief, which I mentioned earlier, that MSMEs, the youth and women are inherently risky. The most significant institutions win, they are able to win this when they force leadership to examine some of these assumptions. And I'll give you one example. We have one of our FIs that we are working with that has been able to drop their interest rates from 42% to 37% and been able to extend their loan tenor from 12 months to 24 months. Not because of external pressure, but because a transformed credit team saw an opportunity differently. So some of these gaps exist. I mean, data issues, BDS issues, product mismatch, but it's how it is viewed and addressed. That's how we introduce the long-term transformation experts in 7 selected institutions to address some of these gaps. And with that, we hope to be able to map the MSME's journey from lending, borrowing at 100 cities today, all the way to maybe say around 100 million, be able to map that journey, see the growth as we move along. So that is how we are approaching and looking at these patterns and building on these patterns to address the challenges within that sector.
Thank you so much. So we've had all the imbalances in the system, ranging all the way from just being able to identify all the way to the risk, the mindset, interest rates have been mentioned. So to Mr. Samuel Sechere, who is in the system, challenges are appearing different on the surface based on how it's been thought of. How do you think financial institutions in general, not just Achimaka Community Bank, how do you think financial institutions in general can balance sustainability, risk management, and still be able to be inclusive? Just your thoughts on how you think financial institutions can be able to do that. You're on mute.
Right. Hello. We are good now. Yes, I believe that the first thing for financial institutions is to realize the opportunity in reaching out to the underserved in the community. Traditionally, we have, I should say, been more conservative, but with the changing dynamics in the industry, it calls for a change in mindset, a change in focus, a change in direction. Fortunately for us as an institution, we've had assistance from CAPLAS, and the partnership has assisted us to refocus from the traditional ways of lending to a more liberal approach in order to get the underserved on board. And so for the industry in general, for other financial institutions, I believe that this is the way forward. We should not see the underserved as too much trouble. We should realize that they are the future, because without them, the bank has no future going forward. Now, balancing the risks associated with serving the underserved as against sustainable practices. We just need to put in structures and systems to ensure that the different risks associated with serving those segments of the community are managed and mitigated. For instance, traditionally, we've been relying on collateral as security for the facilities that we lend. Now, with the change in dynamics, we are now looking at the business itself, how the business is able to repay, the cash flow that it's generating. And we are using that as the basis of granting the facility. And so the collateral now is the business itself, the inherent benefits in the business, how well the business is doing. That is what we are now using as a collateral. And I believe that it is a good way of limiting the risk, because at the end of the day, if the loans are repaid, the issue of collateral does not become an issue. It does not become a problem at all. We have stuck to our limited way of doing business, limited way of reaching out to our clients. But now we need to change. If you permit me, as an institution, with the new approach that we have adopted, we have been able to enroll and to reach out to over 700 clients within a matter of 6 months. And we have been able to grant over 11.2 million in credit to new clients. These were clients who otherwise would not have had access to credit, at least from us. And so it is an opportunity for all of us. If we do the balancing act very well, we will have a sustainable business going forward, because these clients that we have enrolled, we dealt with them based on the businesses they are doing. And these are running businesses, and they are businesses that will be handling going forward. And so it is a way of building the bank's business. We don't look at today alone, but we look at tomorrow, we look at the next 5 years, and we look at the next 10 years. We look at the bank being in existence way beyond where we see them now. If we do that, we'll be able to do the balancing act very, very well.
All right. Thank you. I'm sure in a later conversation, we will try and have you tell us what you are doing differently, because you've mentioned more of what has come out of the changes you've done. So we would love to know exactly what you're doing differently. But before then, this is to Ernest. How financial, you already mentioned what the primary role of financial institutions, the setup was for. Take money, save it, give it to other people, and that's how the business was like, or is like. We've all mentioned how if they have different mindsets, it can help to change how they see being inclusive. However, just to play the devil's advocate, the risk that they assume would happen, let's say how they are looking at risk when it comes to these sectors, to some extent, it's valid, because you've already mentioned the fact that you can't identify people, they don't have record keeping. I mean, the financial institutions thinking that that's a risky business is valid anyway. So just to play the devil's advocate, and then to ask you, how do you think financial institutions can rethink risk when dealing with underserved groups? We're talking about persons with disability, young people, young women. How do you think that financial institutions can rethink what risk is when dealing with these groups?
Thank you very much. And the issue of risk is real. I mean, and we are not in any way, when we start talking about rethinking risk, trying to push it off or ignore it. No. Rethinking risk does not really mean that you are ignoring risk at all. We are looking at questioning ourselves whether we have the right tools to actually assess the risks that we are all talking about. Why do I say this? If you understand the actual risk you are talking about, not about how you feel, about how you perceive, but data-driven risk, that you know that, like MD just spoke about, the fact that you can look at the business itself instead of what you think about the business. Try to understand this, then you are having an alternate way of understanding risk instead of just applying risk to segments of the demographics. That because they are women, they will use the money to run their homes. Because they are young people, they will take the money and, like they say, they will jackpot with the money. I mean, I have heard in a setup where somebody said, even if young people are applying for visa, they should actually prove that they haven't taken a loan before they're leaving the country. I mean, that is how scared we are of the issue of risk. So let's see the difference between real and perceived risk, okay? There is a segment or a component of this uncertainty that is just perceived. But if you really commit to understanding, first of all, the demographics and the kind of business they are doing, as Mr. Sechwe said earlier, trying to really ask yourself, these underserved groups, the more data you have on them, the more you are able to really understand what the risk issues are and determine whether you are happy to take on that risk. Because I would have to accept that financial institutions have to determine what level of risk they are keen on taking. They can't just take any risk because we say they should take them. They look at their capital structure and they are able to say that, okay, when we take on this more, and we are exposed, we are still able to manage. So that's the first issue. The second thing that we need to be doing more of is what Mr. Sechwe spoke about again, cash flow-based lending. I mean, he said something which is very true. In all these demographics that are underserved, one of the major reasons that they are underserved is because we front load collateral to address the risk that we talk about. And those who take collateral will tell you themselves that collateral has not really solved their problems. In fact, when a loan goes bad, the time you spend to even dispose of collateral is a major issue that you have to address. So I'd like us to remember that the issue about rethinking of risk in a smarter way also includes understanding the nature of the business, understanding the cash flow of the business, and making sure that when there are uneven areas, you are able to address that. Portfolio risk management, I mean, they do it without necessarily thinking about it as risk management. This group lending approach thing that is done, instead of looking at individuals, women groups, even persons with disabilities in some occupational groupings. Young people is a bit difficult for that youth approach because of the way they are always moving from place to place. But even then, there are ways of going around that, the kind of business they are involved in. So I guess there are a number of tools that already the institutions are using, but those tools are standard tools. Credit appraisal tools are one size fits all. You have to look at this various segments and make sure that you spend more time. I agree, it takes a lot of work. But let's go back to look at the tools that we are using. The same for youth cannot be the same for established businesses. The one for men with titles, properties here and there that they can flaunt around could not be suitable for women. So if we are able to look at this, we are not trying to say be lenient or show favoritism. No, it's just that have the right tools to assess the risk. In conclusion, risk will always be there. We can't ignore it, but it will not be the only reason to deny access to finance for these demographics, because that will not be a fair way of doing business. And indeed, I keep on saying something which let me just chip that in. For financial institutions to grow today, they need to take a look at the segment that we are talking about. The growth potential in serving that market far outweighs the potential that the existing traditional comfortable markets we always focus on are concerned. Let's keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So my next question will be to Esther. So now we've understood the challenges, the barriers. To an extent, we've started touching on what we can do to change mindsets and to be able to have access to finance. As an MSME owner, you've mentioned about the fact that yes, you've gone for a loan. We would want to know how that helped you in your business to begin with. And then, apart from receiving loan from an MSME, is there any other thing that you think you would need most if a financial institution is able to do that for you, aside receiving loans? We know the primary thing is to go for money, save, and all of that. But personally, what do you think that if a financial institution did differently for you would help you in your business beyond loans? Kindly unmute.
Wow, thank you. Yeah. With the banks, when the assessing the loan, how it has helped me. Anyway, I'll say it's not bad, though my primary intention wasn't met, because initially I wanted to expand the business. And so looking at the challenges, I have to take a little. And so the little I have to divert it into other business that I will have to repay it off. So aside the bank giving us loan, me personally, what I would like the bank to consider, which they also know and they are working on it, is the time period. Yes. Like the man in Kwashiman is saying that they have 10 years to 24 months. If the other banks too can do that, and even 36 months, so that our vision can be achieved, I think it will help.
Okay.
So that's what I would need. And if any bank is willing to grant me, because me personally, I know that if I should take a loan from bank, I have to pay it, so that others too can also benefit from that. And so when I'm taking it, I'm also looking at how easy I can pay the loan off. And so if a bank is there ready to support me, build up or expand my business to 1,005 beds or 1,000 beds, and then with the long term, that's if 2 years, 3 years, then that will give us an ease to work and then achieve our goal. We are not desperate to get the loan. We are not desperate, just that we have a vision of building something. Yes. So I want the cool way, not the harsh way. So if it's within a short time, then we cannot go for it. We will still be where we are.
Yeah.
So this is
Great.
for the bank. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So he's mentioned something beyond loans. So it's not just about getting the money. Sometimes the should I say how do I even put it? Apart from getting the loan, some of the structures that have been put in place in terms of repayment and all of that is very important as well. And so that brings me to Mr. Secretary. You mentioned that you've done some changes that's allowing you to extend more credit. Before the question, I've seen that there's one question dropped in the chat. Please, you are encouraged to put questions and your thoughts, and we'll take them in due time. But
Right.
before we do that, Mr. Secretary, you mentioned that you are doing things differently, which is making you more inclusive. So we want to know, how is your institution approaching this inclusion inclusion differently now? That's helping you to extend finance. What exactly are you doing that is different? And what institutional changes do you think other financial institutions should make to better serve women, youth, and MSMEs? We want to know exactly what you're doing differently, just to encourage other financial institutions to be able to do so.
Okay, thank you, Rose. What we are doing now is we are now more intentional in our approach to getting the excluded into our mainstream operations. We have now mainstreamed serving the underserved, as in women, youth, and PWDs. We have put in place a youth policy, which we previously did not have. And so it has helped us to bring up strategies that are directed at the youth. We now have in place a gender governance committee that is embedded in all our decision making to ensure that the needs of women are really mainstream in every strata of our operations, in our policy making, in our credit delivery, and in all aspects of our service. And so that is another aspect. And then we have a focal person in charge of PWDs, whose responsibility is to ensure that we are always in contact with the PWDs, especially with their recognized bodies, in order to get them on board. And these are things that we are doing, and they are yielding results. I already mentioned also that we have moved away from the traditional way of lending, as in collateral-based lending, now to cash flow lending. So that's another thing that we are doing differently. That is now bringing in those who previously would have been excluded. So we have these three main things that we are doing. And again, we, as an institution, we have made sure that the message is from the board of directors through management to all staff, that this is the new direction. This bank has been in existence for 43 years. The core customers that we used to have some years back, some of them are no longer productive because of age. Some have left this world. And so if we continue to dwell on the traditional way of doing things, there will be no future for this institution. The future is with those who are excluded. The future is with the youth. The future is with women, especially young women. And that is the direction that we are towing. And we are drumming this into every aspect of our institution. Everybody in the institution has to buy into this new direction that we are going, and it is really making an impact. Lastly, I want to say that we are no longer waiting for the underserved to come to us, but we are rather going to them with innovative products. Our entrepreneur just mentioned some of the things that she would want in financial institutions to do. We have gone beyond that. We are now granting credits at very reduced rates to those that we have identified as being underserved in order to get them on board. It seems a paradox, but our institution, it rather leads to high credit interest rates, rather leads to loan default. And so we have done everything to make sure that we grant credits at the minimum rates possible. And then another aspect that we are doing differently, we are extending the loan tenors for all our credit facilities across board. It's unfortunate that the entrepreneur on the call is not in our region. I would have loved to take up her suggestion to work with her. But who knows? Maybe at some other time, that opportunity will come up. So, Rose, these are the number of things that we are doing as an institution to make sure that we have a very inclusive institution.
Okay, thank you so much. I think what I've heard in the submission the most is the intentionality. How intentional you are being about ensuring that you're reaching out to these sessions. Ernest, I would want to pick your thoughts. Aside the intentionality, what other practical shifts do you believe that institutions must make to become more inclusive and responsive? You can take it from the demand or supply side, but what practical shifts do you believe institutions must make to become more inclusive and responsive?
Thank you very much. And thanks, Mr. Sechere, for trying to make my work very easy when it comes to the shift that must take place. Yes, intentionality you spoke about very well. It goes beyond intentionality. It's intentionality in action. Yeah. So the reason why I say this is that we need to have clear strategies that have been signed on right from the very top, that this indeed is what we want to do. And so it is not enough at that level alone to sign off. Like Mr. Sechere said, it has to run through every level. So if you have key performance indicators of your staff that does not recognize the fact that they are serving this segment of the market, but they are only being evaluated on the quality of portfolio, they are only being evaluated on the yield curves and other things that come in. It doesn't matter where those are coming from. There are issues. So I want to just talk about intentionality clearly, that there's a strategy that supports it. It translates into key performance indicators. It translates into recruitment. It translates into progression in the institution, just to make sure that you embed this whole intentionality in your day-to-day life. There are other things to look at. Is more of the use of data. Richard mentioned issues about how to work with data in his presentation. The truth is that in each of the institutions we work with, they have in-house a host of, let me say, portfolio of data, that if they will spend time to really analyze that data and say, what is this data telling me? There will be a lot of shift that we would never imagine. I mean, you have institutions, they'll tell you straight away that, oh, our women borrowers are actually the best when it comes to repayment. Now, if you have a segment of your portfolio that is your best performing segment of clients, what do? You find out how to have more of that kind of segment in your portfolio. But if you sit on that data, that tells you this, but you are not analyzing and using the insight, then there's an issue over there. So I like them to really have a complete shift on data issues. And if they can do that, then the next issue is about the whole idea of one size fits all. We must move completely from that mindset and be open to developing products that match segments of the underserved that we are talking about. If we can do that, then again, that's a complete shift that we are having over there. There is the thing about seeing how a prepared borrower becomes a less risky borrower. I'm talking about learning to invest in customer or client acquisition, learning to invest in developing, growing with clients. A number of the institutions are quite wary of this. They don't want to do that. Unfortunately, if you don't do that, you can't become more inclusive. Because truth be told, this segment we are talking about, we know that they have challenges, as we have listed already from the demand side. And we are trying to solve those challenges from the supply side. So it is important that we take things like BDS seriously, how to have sustainable non-financial services for these people, just basic training in financial literacy, basic provision of tools to keep records. That complete shift in seeing yourself as investing in the businesses so that they will be more ready for your kind of portfolio that you are looking at, the kind of growth that you are looking at. Then the issue about accessible channels. In some previous conversations for persons with disabilities, there have been concerns about why is Bank of Ghana trying to push this agenda so quickly. It was explained, and maybe just to borrow from that again, that just ensure that at least there is one branch, one agency that has been dedicated and has all the accessible channels that would make sure that the person with disability segment is also being considered deliberately in the things that we do. I will finally talk about having a readiness pathway. How are we preparing them to take and assume the loans? So that comes back to the assistance issues. That is not always when AMI or any other partner comes in. The institutions themselves have the capacity to actually spend time to grow businesses and serve them to serve them back. That would be a win-win situation for all. I think that is worth considering. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we've seen that for financial institutions to be inclusive, it requires more than intentionality. It requires action. It requires collaboration on different fronts. Looking at the submissions that Mr. Secretary has made, it requires responsiveness. It also requires that there are systems that are able to understand based on data. And we've seen all this. So my next question will be we'll be rounding off in about 15 minutes max. It tops, we should be out of here. To Richard, where do partnerships between development programs, financial institutions, MSMEs, where is the fall short? And what will stronger collaboration look like to you? Or should I say, what can we do to ensure that there's no disconnect between there's been lots of development programs that have been going on for a long time. So where do partnerships between development programs, financial institutions, MSMEs, where do they often fall short? And what should stronger collaboration look like to ensure that these conversations do not just bring into mind what should be, but to action it out? Where's the shortfall and what will stronger collaboration look like for you?
Thank you very much, Rosalind. I was making a lot of notes from my other colleagues. So let me start with a fatal flaw. Sequential thinking in systems that requires simultaneous action. So we tend to think in process-wise, as in, let me do this, while some of the things that must be delivered must be done simultaneously. So the classic failure mode. So a development program trains MSMEs and assumes FIs will lend to them. The FIs assume MSMEs will present them with clean documentation, which Ernest mentioned earlier on. All these three are waiting for the other to make the first move. So at First Plus, all our four components, access to finance, BDS, enabling environment, and nimble capital are designed explicitly to break this sequencing trap by running all in parallel. And even within FIRST+II, the gaps have been very instructive. And I'll talk about 3 gaps. 1, FI transformation timelines versus BDS delivery timelines don't align. So the FIs expect a pipeline that comes in with bankable projects. The BDS, is delivering at a certain time, and both must align to ensure that at least as we prepare the BDS, the FIs have the culture to support these new MSMEs that are going through some of these interventions to access finance. And I'll give you also another example. The LTT model that we have, the long-term translation model that we have with 7 institutions, is trying to close that gap. But the lag created a window where prepared clients faced unprepared institutions. So these are things that is a gap that you have to address to ensure as we prepare the MSMEs, the FIs are also prepared to be able to finance the prepared SMEs willing to borrow financing. 2, programs like this have partnerships. So for us, we have about 10 partners, and consortium management is harder than you think. So the FIRST+II brings together 10 consortium partners, each with their own timelines, their own accountabilities, and their own institutional cultures. That has a way of impacting delivery timelines. So how you address that is through stronger collaboration, which requires dedicated infrastructure, not just governance meetings, but embedded coordination rules with authority to unblock some of these things that comes up. The third is MSMEs are rarely at the table when partnership plans are being set and being designed. It is designed and brought to them, and it becomes a program, and this is what it says. So program designs for MSMEs without meaningfully designing with them. So we design for them, but we don't include them. The most durable partnerships in the FIRST+II have emerged from the feedback we've received from the partners we receive, which is normally very, very, very short. So that forces us to iterate as we go along and build resilient systems and be able to include the peculiarities of some of these MSMEs within that design. What does stronger collaboration look like? So I will look at it from 1, a shared data layer, where FIs, BDS providers, and guarantee facilities can see the same client's journey. So the fact that the FI is financing, the BDS is providing some technical assistance to improve process, and the guarantee facility is providing some guarantee for them to lend to. They must be able to see the client journey from point A to point B. 2 is a shared risk framework where development capital is structured to de-risk the first mover FI, any FI that comes on board, willing to pilot some of these risks. And then lastly, a co-design process. So the co-design is part of the MasterCard Foundation's value system, where MSMEs are consulted before products and programs are finalized, not afterwards. That is how I see a stronger collaboration working in this space.
Okay, thank you so much. So what we've seen with that is for stronger collaboration, it runs all the way from the beginning of the program design, all the way to partners, and then to the participants that we are looking at impacting. So those are some of the ways. Great one there. So we'll take our last round of questions and then we are out of here. So, Mr. Secretary, what message would you give to other financial institutions about the future of inclusive finance? You have mentioned again and again that, you know what, there is business in this people, in this sector, or with this section that we have overlooked these years. So what message would you give to all other financial institutions about the future of inclusive finance and why they should consider it strongly?
Thank you once again. I've already mentioned that the future for all financial institutions is in the segments that hitherto have been excluded. All institutions should see those segments as a very profitable segment whose different risks can easily be managed with the right systems. Once those risks that we shy away from are managed, the underserved sector of the community can be helped to boost the economy of the various communities in which they are found in. Now, if the economies are boosted, ultimately, we are the financial institutions who will benefit. And so we should go out of our way to develop products that will help them to come up with their full potential, and that will help to impact the society. Now, I mentioned that we have been intentional in our approach, and I want to advise my other colleagues to look at women entrepreneurs, the youth, and PWDs, because our experience has shown us that they have key skills which we may not find in the traditional customers that we have been dealing with. It is not enough to hold on to what we have, but we should look at the future and expand. As we expand, we should expand with the underserved in the community. Why do we need to do this? Beyond the profit that we make every year, we want to see a society that is inclusive. We do not want to see anybody left behind. Particularly for community banks, we have been brought on board to serve the community. If we neglect the community in which we are, and we look at other segments, it will be a mission drift, and that is not what we were set up to do. If we really want to go according to the mandate of community banks, I would say that inclusive banking should be the core of whatever we do. And so I want to encourage my colleagues to follow this agenda and support whatever we are proposing this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Before I let you go, there's a question in the chat for you. It says that as your institution expanded lending to underserved segments through a more liberal approach, how did the actual risk as compared with the initial perceptions or assumptions about those clients? So I think that to an extent is what Mr. Ernest was trying to say. The person is asking, what's the actual risk as compared to the perceived risk with the sectors, with the sections that we are talking about?
Great. From the experience that we've had so far, we have recorded the lowest loan default from the new product that we introduced to target women and the youth. We call it the Ejuman Koswo loan product. And once again, we developed it with the assistance of Kaplas and their team. And we have had a very good report from the introduction of that product. And it carries, as I speak, the default rate is below 1% for that segment of the product that we have introduced. And it shows you that the perceived risk can really be managed. As part of my submission, I mentioned that we have a number of sales agents who are in constant touch with the customers on the ground. And what it means is that each and every day, if there's a facility that has been granted to any particular client, the opportunity is there for that client to make a payment. Because there is no long gap between when the facility is given and when loan repayments are taken, it limits the default. That is one peculiar advantage that we have. But again, we give the customers the opportunity to determine when they want to make the repayments. It has to be convenient for them, and that is what we are doing. Yeah, so to answer the question, the risks, yes, the risks were there, but the strategies that we put in place to manage the risks have worked very well. And so there has not been any challenge. And we are now looking at scaling up what we are doing beyond where we are at the moment.
Okay, thank you so much. So to answer the question, the risk is not as risky as we are seeing it. It can surely be managed. Please, if there are any questions, please feel free to raise your hand so that we can take them whilst we do the last round of questions. So if there are any questions, please, you can feel free, and any comments, any questions, this is the time. Please feel free to do so. So we'll still go on if there's none. So to Ernest's last round of question. We've talked about your first point still really sticks with me about not even knowing or seeing the people to even give them the opportunity to have access to finance. And this goes beyond the financial institution. This goes beyond the clients as well. What gives you hope? If there is anything that gives you hope that this inclusive conversation that we have is able to materialize in Ghana, what is that one thing that gives you hope about the future of inclusive finance in Ghana? And if there are any last words that you want to add to that.
Thank you very much. Hope, you must always have hope. Without hope, there's nothing else we can do. So, hey, I'm very, very hopeful. I'm always hopeful about the future. It can always be a better day. But let me be very specific in this industry, okay? I am very passionate about this sector because my colleagues and I always recognize that this is where our business operates from. And we're in a sector that we have so much confidence in, and we haven't done much yet, and we still have a lot to do. What gives us hope? I take from Mr. Secretary's point of view that this, you actually have untapped markets waiting out there. I earlier on mentioned that when you take the informal sector, the sector that because they are not visible, they are not well documented, they haven't been really receiving the needed attention. Only the creme de la creme out of that is the one that receives attention. There is a significant number out there. Over 2 million businesses are out there that are seen as problem that many people don't want to get there. That potential alone gives me a lot of hope that with the right mindset, with the right tools, the tenacity, we are going to make some reasonable progress in that area. Why do I have that hope? Number one, we have changes coming up that in the reforms that are taking place. You heard some few months ago that said rural banks, we're now calling them community banks. It's just not in name. It's actually one that is driven by a lot of action. Mr. Secretary said community, we are in the community. That community mindset tells all of us that there is a lot that we can do to grow with that community. So what that actually means is that we're going to have bigger, stronger financial institutions. People don't talk about it very often, but when you start looking at capitalization and you are doing these reforms, what you are trying to do is you have bigger, in terms of capital base, you have stronger institutions that are able to experiment with things, that are able to take risks that hitherto they were not taking, and we would be the better for it. So that hope is there. I think that last mile actors, which are mostly found in these demographics that we've been discussing up to this point, are going to get a big boost in their arms because of the changes in the space, that we can bring all, we can see impact, and we can report and get support for them. Oh, that gives us a lot of hope. Now, there is a lot of pockets of initiatives, not only the one we do under FIRST+II, but also those that other partners work on. KFW, for example, supporting Bank of Ghana, DBG, and others. All these small pilots, what do they give us? We have success stories that we can scale up. Mr. Secretary just spoke about all those great things. If you just imagine that we have a forum where Mr. Secretary and other like-minded CEOs are sharing what we have been able to achieve through the kind of BDS, the kind of long-term transformation things that have been done, the kind of things we used to fear, like somebody, the Egyptians that we see, you see them no more kind of mentality, you know. So there's hope in that area also, that we can scale up all of these. I think that, let's not forget, women that constitute a significant part of the population are known as low risk, and we can grow business on that. We have youth population. I mean, what else do you need? Other economists are crying that they are all aged, they are old people. They're trying to get people from our part of the world to their part. We have a vibrant youth population, digitally oriented, and we are moving to digital space more and more. I think that the future is bright. And I would just encourage financial institutions and all the actors in the ecosystem. That collaboration that Richie spoke about earlier on is very important. Let us not forget that financial intermediation has its own objectives. Profit is great, but there's some balancing that needs to be made to grow sustainable businesses. And if we are looking at this segment of the demographics that we've been talking about, we would actually be building that balance, and our future will be more guaranteed than if we don't. Thank you very much for this opportunity to have a conversation on this critical subject.
Thank you so much. We are having some comments in the section. From Abba, we say, insightful session, thank you. We have from Mr. Ben Aite Agent, great insights. Biggest bottlenecks that you're taking away is inclusive lending is mindset. Yes, so the mindset can be changed and we are on it. There's a question for Mr. Secretary. It looks like my people do not want me to let you go yet. It says, BDS from banks to MSME clients is key to promoting inclusion. Is AKCB being intentional in this area? And I think he's already shared his advice with other FIs, unless, of course, it's in the area of the BDS. But what is the stance of AKCB when it comes to BDS from bank to MSME clients? Just briefly, in 2 minutes or 1 minute.
Yes. Yes, I share the sentiment. I believe that that is the way to go. I may have missed mentioning it, but we actually have established a full-fledged BDS unit because of that. We did not have that. It was a unit under another department. Now it's a department on its own, focused on providing services, business development services to our SME clients. So that is something I failed to mention. But yes, BDS is a key part of what we do.
Okay, thank you so much. Richard, your last take, and then we are out. If we are to measure progress in inclusive finance, especially as a voice in the development space that's trying to change and ensure that inclusive finance is actionable, if we are to measure real progress in inclusive finance over the next few years, what should we be looking for beyond the usual numbers of we've been able to lend to this number of women and what have you, just in the general ecosystem in our space, what should we be looking for? So what should progress look like when we are talking about inclusive finance beyond the numbers?
I'll keep it brief. So what comes to mind are 5 key things. So 5 indicators that actually signal transformation. 1, institutional lending behavior without program incentives. I think over the years, we've seen most programs, partnering with some incentives to get FIs at the table. So if we're able to change that lending behavior without program incentives, that is real progress. 2, interest rates that targets the excluded segment. So I mentioned earlier, there are some FIs that were able to reduce their interest rate from 42 to 37 for agri products for just one partner, and also extended the tenor beyond 12 to 24. And it showed a very significant signal in the entire program. 3, disability inclusion normalized, not project dependent. Sometimes for most programs, we'll go to GFD, we'll pick their disability inclusion action plan, embed it into a program and say, embed it at FI level as the internal policy of the FI. But it is not a normalized approach. I remember NS talking about one branch having that access infrastructure that makes it easy for them to just log in, maybe go in, they have the counter lower to their level. Some of these things that are intentional, not just an afterthought. 4, women's financial decision-making autonomy, not just access. So they should be able to, go through the loan process purpose. I mean, like, manage their repayments, retain their surplus, and just apply it back into the business. And then lastly, youth employment quality, not just employment count. So these are more on the qualitative side, because what can be counted, we count. So in this, our underlying principles will be, we should be measuring whether the system has changed, whether FIs price risk differently through these interventions that we actually provide, where regulators enforce inclusion standards, where MSMEs can access repeat financing, not just once, without program intervention. Head count metrics are necessary, but not sufficient. The question is, what happens after FIRST+II leaves the room? Food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard. Thank you so much. There's a lot to think of and a lot to be done, but there is hope and the future is bright. Before we signed off, Esther, any last words from your end? Any last words on the conversation we've had? Is there anything that you would think should be changed? Any thoughts you want to leave us with before we sign off from here? If Esther is still on. Okay. So with that being said, today's conversation reminds us that inclusion is not simply about expanding access. It is about building systems that genuinely work for everybody, with nobody left behind. The future of a resilient economy or ecosystem will depend on how intentional institutions are listening, adapting, not doing things the same, collaborating on different fronts, and responding to the realities of MSMEs, women, youth, and underserved communities. And one thing we are taking away is that it is not even as risky as we are perceiving it to be, and there's a lot of business in giving access to finance to underserved groups. So with this said, I would want to say thank you all so much for making time to be with us. We really do appreciate it. The conversation has just begun. There'll be bigger platforms for us to have these conversations and have actionable points from it. Like Mr. Jandu said, if we have platforms where we have like-minded institution leaders like Mr. Sechre together, there's a lot that we can do. So with that said, we'll see you in August with another insightful conversation to be had. and want to say thank you so much for making time. Mr. Jandrew, thank you. Mr. Setcher, we appreciate it. Mr. Bobby, thank you for being here. Esther, we are honored. And to all of you who stayed throughout the conversation, want to say thank you so much for being a part of it. The conversation is not ending, we'll take it up. But for now, want to say thank you so much for being a part of the FIRST+II Dialogue Series, first edition. Thank you. Bye.